So yes, this is being recorded, and I want to say something, and I'll probably say it after or before the next few meetings to keep reminding everyone the importance of um, collaboration and keeping it within the Edge community. A couple years ago, I publicly had made talked about with the thin zones and having these red lines and green lines come across. And sure enough, they show up on another platform. I'm not saying that they took that from me and that idea. Great, I'm not the smartest guy in the world with the best ideas, but you never know. So when I roll out these edge zones, and we did it in the workshop and we'll do it in these meetings going forward, I don't want people going to a different platform and say, hey, could you create this stuff for me? If that guy didn't think enough to do it, then why the hell would you ask him for it? So I can't legally tell people not to do it, but if I kind of catch wind people are trying to get another platform to do what this has done, then just cut your edge content and go from there. I want people to share within this community, not outside of it. And I could care less if you ever get a Market Delta subscription. Just telling you, with what we have, keep it, collaborate on what we're talking about. I'm not in the business to make some other platform better or more profitable. I probably already did it for another platform, and it's one thing. It's one thing when you don't make money on an idea. It's a whole other thing when someone else does on your idea. So I want people to respect each other's intellectual property, including this. I'm not going to dig into it a lot today with the edge zones, but I don't want anybody in this group going to their platform provider and saying, hey, could you build this stuff? That would piss me off. And I think you guys could respect that. Like I said, if that guy didn't think of it, then why would you want to come to him with the help and the information? So keep it in-house. Now, I'm not going to get into those edge zones just yet, but I am going to talk about what we discussed at the workshop with Trevor. John jumped into it a little bit, and I'm going to explain it in a different way to help people understand absorption. Introducing buyers to buyers. What does that mean? Well, first of all, does anybody have any questions with what I just said? No? Good. So what does that mean? Buyers meeting buyers. We talk about aggressive buyers a lot, and those are who we're going to follow. But if we go to this chart, and we're going to show two figures here. Aggressive buyer is this woman with a bag, and a passive buyer is this guy with his hand up. All right? That's what these two are going to represent as I put them down in here in this empty space. Aggressive buyer is the female, passive buyer is the male. Don't think any deeper into it. Why is the girl aggressive? Why is the guy passive? Don't go down that route, because I didn't. Just is what it is. Aggressive buyer is the woman, passive buyer is the guy bidding 2 on the screen here. I actually should have made this price 1 and 2, but I didn't. So the fictitious prices are 3 bid, 4 offer, 3 bid, 4 offer, 3 bid, 4 offer. All right? And this person jumps up and buys 4s, and it turns the market from 4 offer to 4 bid. That aggressive buying would show up on a green and balance, correct? If it was fit the percentage ratio. All of a sudden, it appears that she is joined by all of these passive buyers, which is the aggressive buyer gets introduced to the passive buyer, and the market finds direction to the upside. So when you hear Trevor came in a little bit on Friday in the trading room, and then guys in the workshop, you heard a little bit about absorption. To filter out just trying to find passive buying or just trying to track aggressive buying, how about when they meet each other and you already have an opinion or a bias to get long or short, and this could help be the trigger. An aggressive buyer gets introduced to a passive buyer. Now let's go to the charts and show what I've done with it to give you a sense of a little opposite. It's still a little noisy that I have all these red and green rectangles, right? Let's open it up. I kind of flipped it around, and just with the numbers, generally when you have more on the right side, let's look at this right up in here, this 1724 by 3000. Generally, when you have more on the offer than the bid, it would be green.
So Philip 66 in the comments on Q&A saying that card's second half capex is expected to be lower than
turn this guy down. Right? It would be green. More aggressive buyers than aggressive sellers at the same price. What I flipped was to show it being red because there's more passive sellers, 3,000. If you look at a green, there's more passive buyers than passive sellers. All right? Passive, passive. Just look at the passive. That's potentially showing absorption. So this is qualified for a number, I think, greater plus or minus 400. I think the difference in this delta is plus or minus 400. It'll appear red or green. Red is more passive sellers on the offer. Green is more passive buyers on the bid. Now I'm going to show you where it doesn't work, not just where it always works. Let's say you, nowhere in here, up here in this example, do we have that previous slide where an aggressive buyer met a passive buyer, except for in here. Aggressive buyer would be the female, jumped up, bought it, and then it kicked back and it had some absorption. And the market did go higher. Why didn't it work? Well, you might have been able to see this and buy it and say, oh, it did work for X amount of ticks up here. But just remember, this is something that's dynamic that could change. It can go green and then come back off as it's trading. And you got to realize it's a momentum trade because this thing already rallied from down there all the way up in here. So you just got to be careful. Where I'm saying it didn't work is because generally you might be able to find some good near-term support on this chart as it curls back over. We didn't. Where this could help you is to say, well, this is a B2B bar and it's bearish sooner rather than later. This area probably should have held. Aggressive buyer meets a passive buyer. Happened a little bit down here. Aggressive buyer meets a passive buyer. Forget about the numbers ahead of it, below it. Yeah, but, you know, there was absorption on the offer. Yeah, great. I'm just not using this in a vacuum. I'm saying there's maybe a level down in here. Then aggressive buyer shows up. That quickly turns into an imbalance. And they're willing to defend it at the same price with decent size. It's not going to get you long at that price, but it could help get you long sooner rather than later and understand the turn instead of having to wait all the way up here to say, I should have bought it down in here. A fire in the ready aim fire progression. 68.5 was kind of sort of a level. It was yesterday's close, if you guys remember. Still is. It's held a couple times, more than I would have thought down in here. Now, there might be too many of these reds and greens. And so you could change that in the filter where you get, like here's a red, where it goes red with aggressive selling and then a lot of passive selling. Aggressive seller meets a passive seller. All right, nice to meet you. Let's go down. Comes up, works as nice resistance. And now someone could say, but Anthony, you see a green, would you buy it in here? No. It's in the middle of this chop. Maybe I would, but it's in the middle of the chop. Know where you're at on the map. This one starts taking you to the upper end of a consolidation. Just to repeat, know where you're at on the map when you start to see these. I'm just trying to give better explanations to something that Trevor had spoken about, and to reverse engineer and say this default would come up green because there's more buying on the offer than there was selling on the bid. But I put it red because this case I want to track passive buying and selling. Thin spots, the imbalanced colors, that tracks aggressive buying and selling. These boxes are going to start tracking absorption. Do you have the dynamic? Do you have the marriage between an aggressive buyer and a passive buyer that they could take the market up and start a family? Now, let's get into this and filter it. So I go and I right click highlights for marking footprint. Right now, I have it at plus or minus 800. The higher this number, the less we should get. That's nice. Minus 1200. All right, let's apply it. There we go. We get a little less. All right. And so it's not as noisy. And you play with these based on maybe the session. We never want too many of anything. Here's the red that came in. That's still held because the difference was greater than 1200. This one would have came in before but doesn't because it's not greater than 1200. This is overnight session, which means you're not going to get a lot because the volume is a lot less light. There's a lot less. And if it's lighter, you're going to get less. If it's heavier, you'll tend to get more, depending on your filter. Here's a red, meaning it comes up, aggressive seller meets passive seller. Aggressive seller, passive seller. How often does this work? 100% of the time. And I'm only kidding. Here's another green. Walks up, good support. Subsequent shows the next near term right side of the market, which is sideways to higher. I'm not going to go through each example. What are some questions you have on this? Here's one. Can I define absorption? Same way I would define and tell the story, Mark, of punching a guy in the face. Only you keep punching him and he doesn't flinch. He keeps absorbing a lot of punches. So on the passive buyer side, let's look at this number right here, 47.96, right? You keep punching the bid in the face and someone's absorbing all that selling. Passive buyer, passive. He's just, okay, give it to me. All right, how many more you want to sell to me? Okay, I'll take it. Right? He's absorbing something. And if he's a passive buyer, he's absorbing selling. If he's a passive seller, he's absorbing buying. We had that example today at 70. Remember? I remember. So I was short from up here. Couldn't get filled a tick below it. Right here. Started to absorb the selling. Someone kept replenishing the book with more size to buy it. And finally, everybody who waited to cover shorts down in here started chasing it up, and that's how we had that rally. Well, first off, did you understand the first question? You understand absorption. All right. Now, the second question. Aggressive seller meets passive seller is absorption. Aggressive buyer meets passive buyer, absorption. On the passive side, it is. The aggressive side, they quickly bought it, kicked the market up. And then when it went up, some passive buyers appeared. Let's go back to this real quick. Oh, jeez, look at this. This is running slow. Hold on. All right, well, Mark, what'd you do here? Now you really got me screwed up. There we go. All right. First of all, wham. She's an aggressive buyer. Aggressive buyer. Turn the market. 4 offer, 4 bid. People are trying to sell into the 4 bids, but they can't get it to go lower because a bunch of passive buyers show up to meet the aggressive buyer. And the market goes up. Aggressive buyer is indicative of what? From a visual standpoint, are green or red imbalances. All right? The green numbers. Aggressive buyers came in. Just seemed like they, versus the aggressive sellers, kicked it up on the diagonal comparison. And then if you look to the left, how many aggressive buyers do we have? Just a way to start looking at, are we getting some sort of confirmation on the other side of where the aggression started? This is the 1200, Mike. Question is, am I having the same with the 1200 volume delta? Yeah, that's what I set this to. You see less of them, the higher number you go. Not bad. I agree, Mark. Not bad. Well, for the red rectangles, Mike, they're set not within balance, because it's not an imbalance. It's a delta differential. So you would right-click on your footprint and not go to modify footprint. You would go to highlights for marking footprint, and you throw in volume delta from this column over to here, and then you set your parameters in here. So if you got a greater delta of 1200 or less than negative 1200, it'll go red or green accordingly. This is when I put this bullish B2B bar, and it was right in here, and it wasn't too late, and it wasn't too early before it filled out. Now when it came, it just sat here. It didn't go through it fast until I got up and walked away. Then I'm sure Tom had people either bearish or not as bullish as it went into this area, because this damn bar somewhere in here, guys, would have been a bullish bar. I'm sorry, a bearish bar, okay? And you would have called it right in here somewhere, and it was bearish for a while until this SOB got above here and then went bullish again. Now, if we take a look at this on our edge zones, and I don't want to get into a lot of detail of this, but you can see once it gets through this double stack red, which usually holds it, you got to get bullish. But you also have to remember you're coming out of a coil. This is where the market is right now, by the way. We'll talk more about those edge zones going forward. I'll go through this setting again for those that want it. So right click on a footprint, go to highlights marking for FP, left click on that. I'll leave the settings up for you, Mike, to duplicate it. Make sure you got a less than minus 1200. Put the minus in there. Just copy this setting. Anybody else with any questions? Let me know, Mike, when you're done looking at this. But where these could help you, if you remember Dr. Kepler's talk yesterday, or last week rather, we looked for, I'm not going to get into all the details what he talked about. You guys at the workshop know it. You guys didn't come to the workshop. You should have, and you should next time. But the whole thing is, what I added was green, green, meaning you get green box, like down in here, which means you got some passive buying, but you don't have a green imbalance, right? Here you got a green imbalance, but not enough differential for passive buying. With it set to 1200. Remember, 1200 is maybe too big, but whatever. So what you're looking for is green, green, or red, red, where you're getting now. If you got everything, volume delta and everything else, Mike, I don't know what else to tell you other than reach out to support. But write down this, make sure it's volume delta greater than 12, volume less than minus 1200. You click in the hollow boxes, everything looks the same. If it doesn't, then I'll start sending an invoice to CQG to pay me for doing support. Now, I'm talking about another tool to possibly help you with that confirmation, all right? Another way to kind of, a better way to see the same thing, a better visual, a trigger. Might not work for everyone, but a better alert to help qualify a zone. All right, Mike, I'll take it down for you. So you've got, let's take this, let's actually do this. Let's go back to 800. The only example of it red was up in here on the move lower. Okay, aggressive selling, passive selling, aggressive selling, passive selling. Down in here, aggressive buying, passive buying, aggressive buying, passive buying. But when you're trying to understand absorption, just understand passive, aggression, when they come together. You see it with the green imbalance. Now you could see it with these green rectangles. Peter, are you here? Peter H? I don't see him. Well, he's here. All right, hold on one second, guys. So here's a good question by Mark. And Mark is a guy that I didn't like until I met him. Now I really don't like him. No, I'm just joking, Mark. So Mark asks, if you get that buy imbalance with passive buying and the price doesn't go higher, is that a look out below moment? Yes, especially if it's left in there and they blast through it. So it could often be good subsequent support or resistance. You see how it holds it back over there? You shouldn't go below it much, even if you're on the same bar. But yeah, if you blast through it, like here's an example. I mean, it's kind of the same as going through a thin spot, so I don't want to overcomplicate things. Just trying to give you a simple another thing to look at without confusing yourself. That's why all these reds and greens don't really matter. It's if you get a green green or a red red. And some guys don't have to use this. I'm just giving an idea of recognition to help pull the trigger. I know that whether you're trading poorly in a rut or never got consistent in your trading, it's usually because you're missing too many things. Like you're missing too many good trades or good setups, and this is a way to kind of help clarify a setup so you miss less of it. You know, the one thing about missing setups is it's generally because you don't have it defined enough, so it's not recognizable in real time as it should be. That's why you're missing it. Fear has something to do with it, I get it, but it's also not defining your setup. It's also the reason why you do stupid things. When you take trades that you shouldn't have taken, it's because you don't have your setup defined and you went outside of it too quickly. You're like, this is what I wasn't looking for. Yeah, but then you let your emotions kind of put on the trade. Happened to me today after ISM in here, 9 o'clock. Where the hell was it? In here. I don't mind fading a number. That's within what I want to do, but not real close to where the SOB came out. So ISM came out. It wasn't that bullish either. And so it just rallies. I didn't sell, I sold it here, only a few ticks. I was like trading right here, only a couple ticks higher. In hindsight, yeah, it's easier to say I should have faded it up in here, but there was a red band up in here. It's just if I'm going to fade just a number because I think it's overextended itself, I should have an ancillary that just went right down and helped me get short. It shouldn't just been against a potential small resistance zone so close to the bottom when a number came out that was kind of strong. It's like fade it a little higher if you're going to fade it, not right where the thing came in. So I got ran over a little bit. And that was outside what I looked to do. I don't mind fading a reaction to a number, but this isn't fading and I'm selling it right into the teeth of it, right kind of where it came out. And then it went, what do you mean, lower? No, then it held. Look where it held, right where I got stuck and others would have got stuck. It's a bullish bar. Let me open up Peter's mic to wrap things up, but also reemphasize something that him and I talked about. You could say it in his words because he said it really well. First, let me open up his mic. Peter, how are you?
Can you hear me okay?
I hear you great. How you feeling?
Okay. Oh, doing good.
When I ask people how they're feeling and they're not sick, they kind of think, well, what was I, sick or something? I try to do it to confuse them.
It's just another trading day, man. You either get it or you don't.
That's right. So you were saying when I said I really don't want people going outside different platforms and giving the developer ideas to put stuff on it. What was it you said to me? You remember?
Something. I mean, my kind of position on something like this is really kind of two things. First being, look, if you're working with another provider, if they don't have the domain expertise to see this and to see the value in it, why would you want to facilitate that with them? That would just be a lot of time on your part to do that. And secondly, you'd be doing something like Dr. Kepler warned everybody about was this stuff's not really well known. It's a lot of work to even to get the graphics to look like you guys have even gotten them to look like the CQG. That stuff gets out there, the market makers are going to find ways to get those signals to no longer work as well as they do. So you just be hurting yourself.
Exactly. That's why you keep it. And it's not so much sharing it with dozens of people or even hundreds of people. It's when you get into thousands and thousands of people knowing it.
Yeah, I mean, we all pay, fair amount of money to get into the training program here. I've got kind of an expectation that stuff that I share in the chat room stays within the chat room.
That's it, and that's fair. And that's you
like if you worked at a prop firm someplace else, you're not gonna be talking all your trade ideas with other people. And we had a few people from other prop firms at the conference, and they were great and easy to talk to. But I guarantee they weren't showing their hands. They're taking in information, but they weren't really providing any real input.
Right.
They would share ideas with you and talk with you, but they're not gonna give out the things that help them really see the market incredibly well or exceptionally well and put on really good positions. Their entry criteria.
And a lot has to do with what you said and the fact that they just met you. You know what I mean? Why it's not the same kind of sense of closeness that edge guys create, because they're starting to get to know each other. One of the things the owner of my prop firm said is when he talked to other owners of prop firms, he goes, you don't want to tell them everything we're doing, but if you tell nothing, you hear nothing. So you got to share. And so he would share and he'd get a little info of what they were doing, and it would kind of help both firms without being too competitive. I'm not as, what's the word I want to use? worried about what Kepler said, where if you let too many people know about it, it doesn't work. That doesn't
Right.
bother me as much.
Right.
I see the
Right.
point and I get the point, but I think that all these visuals still have, you still got to create the skill to trade them, and this just helps you, kick you in the rear end to put trades on and take trades off. I remember from my prop firm days, the more people that were hired, the more competition we thought we had and the less money we were going to make. And then it was the opposite. It just, the markets are just really liquid and bigger than you could imagine. So it really takes
Hmm.
a lot if you're the quote
Oh,
seeker.
I mean, if that was the case, I'd be concerned that you grew the reds from even one more member. But that's not the case, and we're looking for people to come in there and,
Right.
with ideas, and they see things, and we share charts back and forth, and sometimes they pick up on something that one of us had, a couple of us hadn't seen, and that spurs a whole other idea. You just keep sharpening your tool, you add another tool to your toolbox if they have a slightly different way. There's a guy in there right now, Lucas, who's working on a couple of different ideas on some stuff that's slightly different than what we've been chatting about, and it's all good. It's very additive. It's really
No,
helpful.
yeah, everything. You got to share to be shared with. It's just the point that we're coming from, just to let the rest of the people in the meeting know, is that um, other platforms aren't your friend. Owners of other platforms aren't your friend. So to spill out intellectual property doesn't behoove you, and it certainly would piss the hell out of me, because a lot of these guys, well, I'm not going to get into it. I don't have any access to grind with anyone, but I would if they just start sponging off of other things. It's already happened with some of the things I have. And again, that doesn't kill me because I can't prove it, but it would if people I share this stuff with start getting it on other platforms to have it. And I think you said it the best, though. It's like if they don't have the domain expertise to add it themselves, you're just going to waste a lot of time trying to tell them to do it. And then they're going to benefit and monetize it. And yet you spent all the time telling them about it, just to have it on your little front end. But that was well said, Peter. Do you kind of would you add anything to this green, green, red, red concept?
No, I like that you guys. I mean, you've been doing it for a while. Some of us have been doing it for a while, more, much more manual. I think it's great that you're automating it. It's anything, when you do something that kind of graphically helps it pop out at you, it relieves a little bit of your of the weight on your mind trying to process, what the market's doing, and the anxiety of getting into an entry. And if you don't feel butterflies when you get into an entry, you need to have your pulse checked.
No, there's no doubt. There's no
So
doubt.
it's all good. I like it.
All right, buddy. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
So if you look at all these reds, they're going to drive you nuts, because it's like passive sellers, passive sellers, passive sellers, and the SOB just keeps going up. You got to filter it out, and you got to be looking for something to do anyways. Again, ready, aim, fire. You shouldn't just be fire, ready, aim, or fire, aim, ready, and that's when you get yourself in trouble. So try to have conclusion that you're seeking, and then have something kick your rear end into making that opinion a trade. So we'll filter and do a lot of different things with these edge zones, and you can see some of the ones flying in down below. But this market has just stayed really tight today where we started. They're just not letting it get too far out of whack. Don't worry about a lack of explanation on those edge zones. We'll get into them deeper and deeper through the month of August. It's not released on Market Delta CQG just yet. I have access to it because it's a alpha test, beta test, some sort of test. And it's never the holy grail. I never try to push that off onto people. Just continue to work on better ways to see the same thing. I'm going to stop the recording now.